Admiral Park Do-hyun stood at the large window of his command station and looked at the stars. He was 62 years old and had given 30 years of his life to the United Earth Fleet. His hair had turned gray, and his face showed the marks of time, but his eyes were still sharp and full of fire. He remembered the day when the aliens first came to Earth. He was a young captain then, full of hope and wonder. The Galactic Concord had opened their arms to humanity and welcomed them into a universe full of life and possibility. For 3 decades, humanity believed they had found friends among the stars. The 3 great races of the Concord, the tall and proud Vareth, the insect-like Molkai, and the ancient and wise Thren had shared their technology with Earth. They gave humans faster ships, better medicine, and the secrets of traveling between stars in the blink of an eye. In return, humanity offered their art, their music, and their endless curiosity. It seemed like a perfect partnership. But on this cold morning, everything Park Do-hyun believed was about to shatter into a million pieces. The door behind him opened with a soft sound. He turned to see Lieutenant Kim Yuna walking toward him. She was young, only 28, with a round face and intelligent eyes. She worked in the intelligence division, spending her days looking at coded messages and secret transmissions. Park Do-hyun had always liked her because she was honest and worked hard. But today, something was wrong. Her face was pale like paper, and her hands were shaking as she held a small data device. "Admiral," she said, and her voice broke. "You need to see this. Right now." Park Do-hyun took the device from her trembling hands. He pressed the button and a holographic screen appeared in the air before him. At first, he did not understand what he was looking at. There were rows of small rooms made of some kind of crystal or glass. Inside each room, there was a bed, a small table, and nothing else. The rooms looked like prison cells. Then the camera moved closer, and Park Do-hyun felt his heart stop beating. Inside the cells were children. Human children. Some were very young, maybe 5 or 6 years old. Others were teenagers. They wore simple gray clothes, and their faces were thin and tired. Many of them had strange devices attached to their heads, metal bands with blinking lights that wrapped around their skulls. Some of the children were crying. Some were sitting in corners, staring at nothing. Some were lying on their beds, not moving at all. "Where did this come from?" Park Do-hyun asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "The reconnaissance ship Horizon's Edge," Yuna said. "They were exploring the outer territories near Vareth Prime. They found this facility hidden on a moon. Admiral, we counted the cells. There are over 400 children in there." Park Do-hyun watched as the recording continued. He saw Vareth workers moving between the cells. They were checking the devices on the children's heads, writing notes, treating the children like they were animals in a laboratory. One scene showed a young girl, maybe 7 years old, screaming and crying as the workers held her down and attached a metal band to her head. Park Do-hyun had to look away. "How long?" he asked. "How long has this been happening?" Yuna's voice shook when she answered. "We checked the records of colony ships that disappeared over the last 20 years. Ships that we were told were lost to accidents or pirates. Admiral, we believe the Concord has been taking our children for decades." The device fell from Park Do-hyun's hands and hit the floor. He stood there, unable to move, unable to think. All those years of friendship, all those treaties and agreements, all those smiling alien ambassadors, it was all lies. The Concord had been stealing humanity's children and using them for something terrible. Commander Choi Tae-woo entered the room at that moment. He was a big man with a stern face and a soldier's way of walking. He was Park Do-hyun's second in command and his most trusted friend for over 15 years. When he saw the Admiral's face, he stopped. "What happened?" Tae-woo asked. Park Do-hyun pointed at the device on the floor. "Watch it," he said. "Then you will understand." Taiwu picked up the device and watched the recording. As it played, his face changed. His skin turned red with anger. His hands closed into fists so tight that his knuckles turned white. When the recording ended, he threw the device against the wall so hard that it broke into pieces. "We killed him," Taiwu said. His voice was low and dangerous. "We kill every single one of them for this." "Not yet," Park Do-hyun said, though every part of him wanted to agree with his friend. "We need more proof. We need to know exactly what they are doing to our children and why. And we need to rescue them before we start a war." He turned to Yuna. "Find Captain Baek Jisoo. Tell her I have a mission for her. The most important mission of her life." Captain Baek Jisoo was the best stealth operative in the entire fleet. She was 35 years old, with short black hair and eyes that could see through any lie. She had completed over 50 secret missions without ever being caught. When she received the Admiral's message, she gathered her team of 12 soldiers and prepared to leave within the hour. Before she left, Park Do-hyun showed her the recording. Jisoo watched it without showing any emotion on her face. But when it ended, Park Do-hyun saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. It was cold, burning rage. "Bring back evidence," Park Do-hyun told her. "Everything you can find. Documents, recordings, anything that shows what they are doing and how long they have been doing it. The galaxy needs to know the truth about our so-called friends." Jisoo nodded. "And the children, Admiral? What about them?" Park Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. "Document everything. Find out how many there are and where they are being held. We will come back for them with an army. I promise you that." 2 weeks later, Jisoo and her team reached Vareth Prime. They landed in secret on the small moon where the facility was hidden. Moving through the shadows like ghosts, they found a way inside through an old maintenance tunnel. What they found was worse than the recording had shown. There were not just 400 children. There were over 800, spread across multiple buildings. Some had been there so long that they had forgotten their own names. The devices on their heads were draining something from them, some kind of mental energy that the Vareth used to power their jump gate technology. The children were being used as living batteries, their minds slowly being emptied until there was nothing left. Jisoo found a boy sitting alone in a corner of his cell. His name was Shin Minho, and he was 16 years old. He had been taken 12 years ago from the colony ship New Bizen when he was just 4. He looked at Jisoo with empty eyes and spoke words that she would never forget. "They told us Earth forgot about us," Minho whispered. "They said our parents sold us to pay for the technology. They said no one was coming." Jisoo knelt down and looked into his eyes. "They lied," she said. "Earth never forgot. And we are coming back for all of you. I swear it on my life." She took his picture, recorded his words, and gathered every piece of evidence she could find. Then she and her team disappeared into the night, carrying with them the truth that would change the galaxy forever. When Earth discovered about the captive children, the galaxy burned with vengeance. Part 2. The gathering storm, the evidence reached Earth on a cold Tuesday morning. Within 6 hours, it had spread to every government, every military base, and every news station on the planet. By sunset, the whole world had seen the recordings. They had seen the children in their crystal cages. They had heard their cries and their screams. They had watched the Vareth workers attach those terrible devices to young heads while the children begged for mercy. For the first time in all of human history, the entire world went silent. Nations that had fought each other for centuries put down their weapons. Political leaders who had spent years arguing about borders and resources stopped talking about their differences. Religious groups that had disagreed about everything found themselves agreeing about one thing. Rich and poor, young and old, people of every color and every language, They all felt the same burning fire in their hearts. Someone had taken their children, and that someone was going to pay out. President Kwon Yoon-ji of the United Earth government stood before the United Nations 3 days after the evidence was released. She was 54 years old, a small woman with gray hair pulled back tight and a face that showed no fear. She had been a teacher before she became a politician, and she had spent her life protecting young people. Now, standing before the leaders of every nation on Earth, she spoke with a voice as steady as stone. "We welcomed the Galactic Concord as friends," she said. "We opened our hearts to them. We trusted them with our futures. And in return, they stole our most precious treasure. They took our children." She paused and looked at the faces before her. Every single person was watching her with complete attention. They told us our colony ships were lost to accidents. They told us pirates had destroyed them. They told us lies while they were draining the life from our sons and daughters. For 20 years, parents have cried themselves to sleep, believing their children were dead. For 20 years, those children have been calling for us, hoping we would come. For 20 years, the Concord has laughed at our grief while they used our young ones as tools. President Kwon's voice did not shake. She did not cry. But there was something in her eyes that made every person in the room feel afraid. Not afraid of her, but afraid of what was coming. Today, I speak for every mother who has lost a child. I speak for every father who has never stopped searching. I speak for every brother and sister who grew up with an empty chair at their table. We will bring our children home, and those who took them will answer for what they have done. The room erupted in applause that lasted for 10 full minutes. 1 week later, an alien ship arrived in Earth's orbit. It was a beautiful vessel, silver and gold, carrying the ambassador of the Threna, being called Threnville, who had been humanity's main contact with the Concord for many years. He came with gifts, rare metals, advanced technology, and many pretty words. General Han Sung-ho was sent to meet him. Sung-ho was 60 years old, a tall man with a scarred face and hands that had seen many battles. He had spent his entire life serving humanity, and he had always believed in honor and fair dealing. 6 years ago, his nephew, a bright young boy named Han Jung-woo, had been on a colony ship that disappeared. Sung-ho had never stopped wondering what had happened to him. Now, he knew that Ambassador Threnville floated into the meeting room on his anti-gravity platform. The Thren were ancient beings, their bodies like twisted trees with glowing eyes and long branch-like arms. They were known for their wisdom and their calm way of speaking. Threnville had always been friendly to humans, always smiling, always offering help. "General Sung-ho," Threnville said in his smooth, musical voice, "I come to explain. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. The children you saw in those recordings, they are not prisoners. They are volunteers. Their parents agreed to send them to us. It is a cultural exchange program, nothing more. We have been teaching them, caring for them, giving them opportunities they would never have on Earth." Sung-ho listened without moving. His face showed nothing. "The devices on their heads," Threnville continued, "are simply educational tools. They help the children learn our languages and our ways of thinking. I understand how the recordings might look frightening to those who do not understand our culture. But I promise you, everything was done with permission. Everything was legal." When Threnville finished speaking, there was silence in the room. Then, General Sung-ho reached into his pocket and pulled out a small screen. He pressed a button and placed it on the table. Between them, the screen showed a recording from the facility on Vareth Prime. A young girl, maybe 7 years old, with long black hair and a face that should have been smiling and playing. Instead, she was strapped to a metal table, screaming and crying, as 3 Vareth workers held her down. One of them was pushing the metal device onto her head while she begged them to stop. The sound of her voice, the pure terror in her screams filled the room. "This girl's name is Park Somi," Sung-ho said quietly. "She was 4 years old when the colony ship Morning Star disappeared 8 years ago. Her mother has been in a hospital for mental illness ever since, destroyed by grief. Her father killed himself 2 years later." He leaned forward, and for the first time, his calm face showed a flash of the rage burning inside him. "Does that look like a volunteer to you? Does that look like a cultural exchange?" Threnval's glowing eyes flickered, but he tried to maintain his calm. "General, I understand your emotions, but leave," Sung-ho said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the air like a blade. "Go back to your masters. Tell them that humanity is coming. We are not coming to negotiate. We are not coming to discuss. We are coming to take back our children. And then we are coming for everyone who touched them, everyone who watched it happen, and everyone who knew and said nothing. Every single one of you will answer for this." Threnval tried to speak again, but Sung-ho stood up and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back one more time. "You called us young and weak. You thought we were soft because we cry at sad stories and laugh at silly jokes. You thought our love for our families made us easy to control. You were wrong. Our love is why we are going to burn everything you have built to the ground." The door closed behind him. Threnval was left alone in the silent room, finally understanding that the peaceful humans he had known for 30 years were gone. Something else had taken their place. Something with fire in its heart and steel in its hands. While the diplomats talked and failed, the scientists worked out. Dr. Lee Han was a small woman with glasses and messy hair who had spent her life studying alien technology. Her husband, Dr. Yoon Ji-ho, was a tall, quiet man who specialized in weapon systems. Together, they led a team of hundreds of the smartest people on Earth, working day and night in a secret facility under the mountains of Korea. They took apart every piece of Concord technology they could find. They learned how the alien shields worked and built weapons that could break them. They studied the jump gates and found ways to disable them. They created new types of missiles, new kinds of armor, new engines that could outrun anything in the enemy fleet. Hannah had a picture on her desk, her younger sister, who had been on a colony ship 15 years ago, a ship that had never arrived at its destination. Every time she felt tired, every time she wanted to give up, she looked at that picture and remembered why she was working. Within 6 months, Earth's fleet had tripled in size. New ships rolled out of factories on every continent. Millions of people volunteered to join the military. Humanity was not building an army. They were building a storm dot, and soon, that storm would wash across the stars. When Earth discovered about the captive children, the galaxy burned with Vengeance Part 3. The first wave, the Day of Vengeance, came on a cold morning in March. 300 human warships waited in silence near the jump gate that led to Verith Prime. They were ships of all sizes small. Fast fighters that could dodge between enemy fire. Medium cruisers armed with the new plasma weapons that Dr. Lee Han had designed. And massive dreadnoughts that carried enough firepower to crack a moon in half. The largest of these dreadnoughts was the Wrath of Seoul, a ship so big that it blocked out the stars behind it. Admiral Park Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the Wrath of Seoul and looked at the stars one last time. In a few moments, they would jump into enemy space. Many of his soldiers would not come back, but every single one of them had volunteered. Every single one of them knew what was at stake. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Choi Tai-woo said from beside him. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with the same fire that filled every human heart. Park Do-hyun nodded. He opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. 300 ships, over 50,000 soldiers, all waiting for his words. "Today we go to war," he said. "Not for land, not for resources, not for power. We go to war for our children. We go to war because there are 800 young souls trapped on Vareth Prime, waiting for someone to save them. They have waited long enough." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was steel. "The Concord believed we were weak. They believed our kindness meant we could not fight. They believed our tears meant we could not rage. Today, we show them how wrong they were. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you touch humanity's children. Forward, all ships. May the fire of our hearts burn brighter than their stars." The jump gate activated with a flash of blue light. 300 ships disappeared from human space and reappeared in the heart of enemy territory. The Vareth were not prepared. They had expected warnings. They had expected threats. They had expected more talking and more negotiations. They had not expected the Wrath of Sol to open fire before it had fully appeared from the jump gate. The first volley of plasma missiles hit the Vareth defense station and turned it into a ball of fire in less than 3 seconds. The battle for Vareth Prime had begun. Captain Beak. Jusu watched the space battle from the window of her dropship as it fell toward the surface of the moon. She was not thinking about the explosions in the sky or the Vareth fighters being torn apart by human weapons. She was thinking about a boy named Shin Minho and a promise she had made. Beside her sat 12 of the best soldiers in the human fleet. They were the rescue team. Their mission was simple but dangerous. Reach the detention facility, secure the children, and hold the position until the main ground forces arrived. Every second would matter. Every mistake could cost young lives. Sergeant O'Mara checked their weapon for the 10th time. She was a tall woman with short hair and a scar across her left cheek. 15 years ago, her daughter had been 3 years old when the colony ship they were traveling on was attacked. Mira had been thrown into an escape pod and shot into space. Her daughter had not been so lucky. For 15 years, Mira had believed her child was dead. 3 months ago, Captain Jisu had shown her a list of names recovered from the Vareth facility. Her daughter's name was on that list. "We're 2 minutes from landing." The pilot's voice came through the speaker. "Enemy fire is light. They're focused on the space battle." Jisu stood up and faced her team. "You all know the mission. The children come first. Everything else is secondary. We protect them with our lives if we have to. Any questions?" There were no questions. Every soldier in that dropship would have walked through fire for those children. Many of them were about to do exactly that. The dropship hit the ground hard, and the doors opened. Jisu and her team ran out into the cold air of the alien moon. The sky above them was filled with fire as human and Vareth ships fought in the darkness of space. But they had no time to watch. They ran toward the facility, their boots hitting the rocky ground in perfect rhythm. The Vareth guards at the front entrance never saw them coming. Jisu's team moved like shadows, fast and silent, taking down each guard before they could raise an alarm. Within minutes, they were inside the facility, running through metal hallways lit by pale blue lights. The deeper they went, the more cells they passed. Children pressed their faces against the crystal walls, watching the soldiers run by. Some of them were crying. Some of them were cheering. Some of them were too tired to do anything but stare. "Keep moving," Jisu said. "We secure the central control room first. Then we can open all the cells at once." But Sergeant Myra had stopped in front of one of the cells. Inside was a teenage girl with long black hair and eyes that looked far too old for her young face. The girl was staring at Myra. Myra was staring back. "Mom?" The girl whispered. Her voice was so quiet that it was barely a sound. Myra's weapon fell from her hands. She pressed both palms against the crystal wall of the cell. Tears were running down her face, cutting through the dirt and blood from the battle. "Yuna," she said. "Oh God, Yuna, it's me. It's really me." Jisoo put a hand on Myra's shoulder. "We'll come back for her. I promise. But we have to keep moving." Myra nodded slowly, though every part of her wanted to break down that wall right now. She picked up her weapon, took one last look at her daughter, and followed the team deeper into the facility. The central control room was guarded by 20 Vareth soldiers. They were big and strong, with 4 arms each and skin as hard as armor. They fought with the desperation of creatures protecting something valuable. The battle was short but brutal. When it ended, 3 human soldiers were wounded, but all 20 Vareth were dead. Jisoo reached the main control panel and started pressing buttons. One by one, the crystal cells throughout the facility began to open. She watched on the security screens as children stepped out of their prisons for the first time in years. Some of them fell to their knees. Some of them hugged each other. Some of them just stood there, unable to believe it was real. "Sergeant Mira," Jisoo said, "go get your daughter." Mira ran out in a cell near the back of the facility. A 16-year-old boy named Shin Minho was gathering the younger children around him. He had heard the explosions and the gunfire. He had seen the lights on the cells turn from red to green. But he did not dare to hope. He had hoped too many times before. Then the door to his cell opened and he saw a human soldier standing there. A woman in armor, covered in dust and blood, with tears streaming down her face. "Earth came," she said, "just like we promised." Minho looked at the children around him. Some were holding his hands. Some were hiding behind his legs. They were all looking at him, waiting to see what he would do. He took a deep breath and stepped out of the cell. The air outside felt different. It felt free. "Come on," he said to the children. "It's time to go home." Over the next 3 hours, the main ground forces arrived and secured the entire facility. 412 children were rescued that day. Many of them had not seen any sun in over a decade. Many of them did not know their own names anymore. Many of them flinched when human soldiers came near, afraid that they were about to be hurt again. But slowly, carefully, gently, the soldiers helped them onto the transport ships. They gave them food and water. They gave them blankets and soft words. They told them stories about Earth, about families waiting for them, about a world where no one would ever hurt them again. Admiral Park. Do-hyun received word of the rescue while the space battle was still raging. The Vareth fleet was broken, their defense stations destroyed, their commander dead. Victory was complete, but Park Do-hyun did not celebrate. He looked at the list of names, the children who had been saved, and he knew that this was only the beginning. There were other facilities, other worlds, other children still waiting. The first wave was over. The war had just begun. When Earth discovered about the captive children, the galaxy burned with vengeance. Part 4. The galaxy burns. The leaders of the Galactic Concord gathered in their great hall on the Thren homeworld. The ceiling was made of living crystal that showed the stars above, and the floor was carved from stone that was older than most civilizations. For 1,000 years, the 3 great races had met in this hall to make decisions that shaped the galaxy. They had always believed they were untouchable. They had always believed they were safe. Now, fear filled the room like smoke. "The humans have destroyed our forward fleet at Vareth Prime," the Vareth High Commander said. His voice was shaking. 70 ships lost. The detention facility is in their hands. The children are gone. "It was your facility," the Mulkai Queen hissed. She was a massive, insect-like being, her body covered in hard black shell, her many eyes glowing with anger. "Your people designed the harvesting program. Your people got caught. This is your failure. We all benefited from the program," the Thren elder said quietly. His voice was calm, but even he could not hide the worry in his glowing eyes. "The psionic energy from human young powered our jump gates, our shields, our weapons. We are all responsible, and we will all face the consequences if we do not stop this human attack. The three races had ruled the galaxy for centuries. They had crushed rebellions from dozens of species. They had armies that numbered in the millions and ships that could block out the stars. Surely, they thought, a young race like humanity could not truly threaten them. They were wrong. While the Concord leaders argued about who was to blame, humanity was already moving. Admiral Park Do-hyun had not waited for the enemy to recover from the defeat at Vareth Prime. He had sent his fleets in 3 directions at once. Striking at all 3 of the Concord races at the same time, Commander Choi Tai-woo led the attack on the Molkai homeworld. The Molkai were a hive mind species, millions of workers and soldiers controlled by a small number of queens. Kill the queens, and the entire Molkai military would fall into chaos. Tai-woo had studied their weaknesses for months. He knew exactly where the queens were hiding. His fleet appeared from the jump gate like a storm. The Molkai defenders rushed to meet him, their ships filling the sky like angry insects. They were brave, and they were many, but they were not prepared for what the humans had brought. Lee Hannah had designed a special weapon just for the Molkai. She called it the Mind Breaker, a device that sent out waves of psychic energy that disrupted the connection between queens and workers. When Tai-woo's fleet activated the Mind Breakers, the Molkai military fell apart in seconds. Ships crashed into each other. Soldiers stopped moving and stood frozen like statues. Queens screamed in pain as their mental links were torn apart. Within 2 hours, the Molkai homeworld was surrounded. Tai-woo did not destroy it. That was not the human way. Instead, he sent a message to the surviving queens. "You took our children," he said. "You used them as tools. Now you have a choice. Surrender and face justice, or fight and watch your species end. You have 1 hour to decide." The Molkai surrendered in 40 minutes. At the same time, Captain An Sujin was leading her fleet into the Thren Nebula. Sujin was small and quiet, with short hair and calm eyes. She did not look like a warrior, but she was perhaps the greatest tactical mind in all of human history. The Thren Nebula was a cloud of cosmic dust and gas that stretched across 100 light years. Hidden inside it was the legendary immortal fleet of the Thren, 1,000 ships that had never lost a battle in 500 years. The Thren believed their fleet was invincible. They believed no enemy could find them in the swirling clouds of the nebula. Sujin found them. She had spent months studying the nebula, learning how the dust moved and where the gravity wells formed. She knew exactly where the Thren would hide their ships, and she had a plan that no one else would have dared to try. Instead of attacking the immortal fleet head-on, she set traps. Her ships dropped thousands of small devices throughout the nebula, devices that would explode when a Thren ship came near. Then she sent a small group of fast ships into the nebula, making the Thren think the main human fleet was there. The Thren took the bait. Their immortal fleet chased the fast human ships deep into the nebula, straight into the trap. Explosions lit up the cosmic clouds like lightning in a storm. Thren ships were torn apart by weapons they never saw coming. By the time the Thren commanders realized what was happening, half their fleet was already destroyed. Sujin's main fleet attacked from the side, finishing what the traps had started. The immortal fleet, undefeated for 500 years, was broken in a single day. But the true horror for the Concord was not the battles in space. It was what the humans were doing on the ground. Across the galaxy, there were detention facilities like the one on Vareth Prime. Each one held human children who were being used as living batteries. Dr. Yoon Ji-ho had created a tracking system that could detect human life signs from across vast distances. With this system, Earth's forces knew exactly where every child was being held, and they were coming for all of them. Every week, another facility was raided. Every week, more children were freed. Human soldiers appeared from nowhere, fought through any defense, and disappeared with the young ones before the Concord could respond. The alien races had no answer for an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. General Han Sung-ho personally led the rescue mission on Mokai Station 7. It was a small facility, hidden inside an asteroid, where the Mokai kept their most valuable human captives, the children with the strongest psionic abilities. The Mokai had believed it was impossible to find. They had believed wrong. Sung-ho soldiers cut through the Mokai guards like fire through paper. They opened cell after cell, freeing children who had never seen another human being in their lives. Some of the children were so young that they did not even know how to speak their own language. The Mokai had taken them as babies and raised them in cages dug in the deepest part of the facility. Sung-ho found a cell with a single boy inside. The boy was 18 years old, tall and thin, with eyes that had seen too much pain. When he looked at the general, he did not seem afraid. He seemed empty. "Are you Han Jung-woo?" Sung-ho asked. His voice was shaking. The boy blinked slowly. "That was my name," he said. "A long time ago." Sung-ho fell to his knees in front of the cell. Tears were running down his scarred face, tears that he had held back for 6 long years. "I'm your uncle," he said. "I'm Han Sung-ho. I never stopped looking for you. Never." For a long moment, Jung-woo just stared at him. Then, slowly, something changed in his eyes. A small light appeared, like a candle being lit in a dark room. He reached through the bars of the cell and touched Sung-ho's hand. "I remember you," he whispered. "I remember your face. I thought I dreamed it, but you're real. You're really here." Sung-ho held his nephew's hand and wept. All around them, soldiers were freeing children and carrying them to safety. The war was still raging across the galaxy. Battles were being fought and won and lost. But in that moment, for General Han Sung-ho, none of that mattered. He had found his nephew. He had kept his promise. And he would never let anyone take his family again. As the weeks passed, the Galactic Concord fell apart. The Verith blamed the Mokai. The Mokai blamed the Thren. The Thren blamed everyone. Old alliances crumbled. Former friends became enemies. The 3 great races turned on each other, even as humanity continued to tear through their defenses. The galaxy burned. And in the flames, children were finally coming home. When Earth discovered about the captive children, the galaxy burned with vengeance. Part 5. Ashes and Dawn. The war lasted 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. When it ended, the Galactic Concord was nothing but a name in history books. The Verith were the last to surrender. Their leaders had fled to a fortress world at the edge of known space, believing they could wait out the storm. They had gathered their remaining ships, their best soldiers, and their most powerful weapons. They had prepared for a long siege. Admiral Park Do-yoon arrived with 400 warships and gave them one chance to surrender. They refused. 20 hours later, their fortress was broken. Their fleet was burning, and their leaders were in chains. But humanity did not destroy the Verith homeworld. They did not kill every alien who had worked in the detention facilities. They did not take revenge in the way that many expected. Instead, they did something far more painful for their enemies. They made them face the truth. A great tribunal was held on the neutral world of Keshen. Representatives from every species in the galaxy were invited to watch. The leaders of the Verith, the surviving queens of the Mokai, and the elders of the Thren were brought before a court of judges, humans and aliens, together to answer for their crimes. For 3 months, the evidence was presented. Recordings from the detention facilities played on screens that could be seen across the galaxy. Children who had been rescued told their stories of pain, of fear, of years spent in crystal cages with metal bands draining their minds. Parents who had lost children stood before the court and spoke of their grief. Scientists explained exactly what the harvesting process had done to young minds. The galaxy watched in horror. Many alien species had known nothing about the Concorde's crimes. They had believed the three great races were wise and just. Now they saw the truth, and that truth was ugly beyond words. The sentences were decided by vote. The leaders of the harvesting program, those who had designed it, approved it, and grown rich from it, were found guilty of crimes against humanity. But they were not executed. That would have been too easy. Instead, they were sentenced to spend the rest of their lives caring for the very children they had harmed. On a quiet moon orbiting a peaceful world, a special center was built. It was a place where the most damaged children, those whose minds had been harmed beyond full healing, could live in peace and safety. The alien leaders were sent there to serve as caretakers. They would cook meals for the children. They would clean their rooms. They would help them learn to speak and walk and play again. They would spend every day facing the consequences of what they had done. Some of them went mad within months. Some of them begged for death. But they were not granted that mercy. They would live long lives, and every day of those lives would be spent trying to repair damage that could never truly be repaired. The Molkai and Thren, having surrendered earlier in the war, were given a choice by President Quan Unji. They could join humanity's new galactic commonwealth as equal partners, following laws that protected the weak and punished those who preyed on children. Or they could refuse and be cut off from all jump gate technology, left alone on their worlds to think about their choices. Most of the Molkai chose partnership. Their new queens had been born after the war, and they wanted nothing to do with the crimes of their mothers. They worked hard to prove that their species had changed, helping to hunt down the remaining criminals and rebuild what had been destroyed. The Thren were more divided. Some of their elders refused to accept that they had done anything wrong. They retreated to their ancient worlds and closed their doors to the galaxy. But their young ones, the Thren, who would live for thousands of years to come, chose a different path. They joined the Commonwealth and swore to use their long lives to make things right. Years passed. The galaxy healed. On Earth's moon, a memorial was built. It was a simple structure, a wall of black marble stretching for a kilometer, carved with names. The names of every child who had been taken. The names of every child who had been rescued. The names of every child who had died in captivity. Each name was lit from within, so that the wall glowed softly in the darkness of the lunar night. Admiral Park Do-hyun, now 80 years old and walking with a cane, attended the dedication ceremony. His hair was white, his hands shook, and his body was tired. But his eyes were still sharp, and when he looked at the wall, he smiled. Beside him stood a young man in the uniform of the Commonwealth Peacekeeping Fleet. Shin Min-ho was 24 years old now. He had spent 2 years in therapy, learning to trust again, learning to live again, learning that he was more than just a battery for alien machines. It had not been easy. Some nights, he still woke up screaming. Some days, he still flinched when someone touched him, but he had survived. And he had chosen to spend his life making sure no child would ever suffer the way he had suffered. Do you think they understand now? Min-ho asked. The other races? Do they understand why we fought so hard? Park Do-hyun looked up at the stars. They seemed different now than they had 30 years ago, when he was a young captain full of hope. They seemed more honest, more real. Some do, he said slowly. Some will learn, and those who don't. He placed a weathered hand on the young man's shoulder. They will remember what happens when you take Earth's children. Min-ho nodded. He looked at the wall of names and found his own near the middle. Shin Min-ho, it said. Colony ship New Bizin. Taken age 4. Rescued age 16. Survivor. That word meant more to him than any medal or title ever could. What now? He asked. Park Do-hyun smiled. Now we do what humans have always done. We build. We grow. We reach for new stars. We make mistakes and we fix them. We love each other and fight for each other and sometimes fail each other. But we never stop trying. And we never, ever forget. He looked at Minho with eyes full of pride. You are the future now. You and all the others who survived. The Commonwealth will need leaders who understand what it means to suffer, who understand why we must protect the innocent. Are you ready for that? Minho stood straighter. The fear that had lived in his heart for so long was still there, but it was smaller now, quieter. It would never fully go away, he knew that. But he had learned to carry it. He had learned to use it. Every time he felt afraid, he remembered the younger children in that facility, the ones he had protected, the ones he had told stories to. He remembered the promise he had made to himself on the day the human soldiers came. He would never let anyone hurt a child the way he had been hurt. Not while he was alive to stop it. I'm ready, he said. Across the galaxy, a new era was beginning. The Commonwealth grew stronger each year, bringing together dozens of species under laws that valued every life. The detention facilities were torn down and the sites were made into gardens where children could play. The jump gates were powered by clean energy now, not by the stolen minds of the young, but the memory of what had happened was preserved. It was taught in schools across 1,000 worlds. It was written in books and shown in recordings and carved into stone. Future generations would know the story of the captive children and the war that followed. They would know what the great races of the Concord had done, and what humanity had done in response. And they would remember the warning that now appeared in every language. On every world, at the entrance to every spaceport, never touch humanity's young. For their love is gentle, but their vengeance burns worlds. The stars continued to shine. Ships traveled between them, carrying traders and explorers and families seeking new homes. Children laughed and played and grew up without fear. And somewhere, on a quiet moon, an old admiral watched the sky and smiled, knowing that the children were finally safe. The end.